Go ahead.
Good morning, Golden Gate Breakfast Club. I am so pleased to welcome Dr. Jonathan Reichental as our speaker. Dr. Reichental is recognized as a global thought leader and advisor on a number of emerging trends, including smart cities, the fourth industrial revolution, environmental sustainability, blockchain technology, I'm sure he'll be telling us what that means, data governance, and digital transformation. He is an in-demand board advisor, global keynote speaker, educator, and writer, including authoring a best-selling book on the future of cities called Smart Cities for Dummies. Today, he's going to talk to us about why our cities hold the key to our human future. He will provide an overview of the smart cities movement and provide a few examples. Over to you, Jonathan.
Well, great. Thank you very much. You got all the tricks here. I like that. Thank you very much, Janice, for that lovely introduction. It's great to be here with you guys this morning. I really enjoyed listening to all the intros and the stories and the jokes. That was a real fun exercise this morning. So thanks for that. Happy to be here. I'm going to speak just for, 30 minutes or so on a pretty big topic that impacts just about everybody in the world. It impacts our planet. What I'd like to share with you today is the case for building and managing smarter cities. And I'm going to build that case, and you can decide at the end of it if you agree or not with my thesis. So what I'm going to try to answer today in the short time I have with you is this question: why do we need smarter and more sustainable communities? Seems like a simple question, but it's a complicated one, and the solutions are complicated, and there's some urgency to this. So let me jump right in and begin to tell you a few stories and take you on this journey for that takes us into the future and creates the case for building smarter communities. For most of the time humans have been around, which we think is around 200,000 years, we didn't really. We weren't that organized. In fact, we were, wanderers and gatherers. You've heard that before. But something changed about 20,000 years ago. As recent as 20,000 years ago, the human condition and experience completely changed. We did start to settle and formalize as communities. And what I'm showing you on the screen here, you might be wondering, what am I looking at? This is what we thought up until recently was the oldest city in the world. This is a Catalhoyuk. This is an ancient city in Turkey, actually, in Turkey. And you can visit it today, and you can see that it's even through this very basic picture here, somewhat organized with some streets and buildings and rooms and storage areas and ways for getting water around the place. And so it's sort of at the time, very sophisticated way of organizing humans. The reason I say this used to be, because we think this is about 12,000 years ago, we've discovered another city in Turkey just in the last 2 years that we think is more like 14 to 16,000 years old. But this continues to be fascinating to understand our kind of urban origins, if you like. Now, once we started building cities, well, we didn't stop. And I wanted to show you here some of the incredible developments that have been happening only recently. Here you see the work that was done in the Middle East, here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, just over a few decades, converting the desert into this incredible metropolis as it is today. Up until about 2008, we were really a rural planet. What I mean by that is that the majority of humans, over 50%, lived outside cities. And then as we passed the 2008, coinciding with the Great Recession, just a coincidence, we became a majority urban planet. And it's accelerating. right? So we are now almost 60% of all humans live in an urban environment, and we're increasing, by the way, that number by about 3 million people per week. So 3 million people per week are moving into cities, and not only are we growing are we building new cities, but we're growing existing cities. Here you see the incredible transformation of Shanghai in China, just over a few decades. Our cities now, we have a small club of mega cities, which are cities over 10 million people, and that club is growing. There's just a handful of those, a couple of handfuls of those, and more will be added in the years ahead. So it's probably safe to say that our future belongs to cities as a humanity. By the time we get to the middle of this century, by the middle of the 21st century, we're up at 70% of all humans live in cities, and that number will keep creeping up as we approach the end of the 21st century. I've called this the century of cities, and I fell in love with this topic a few years ago, having worked in government and being a leader in government and in the city, and realized that among the big topics that we are grappling with, in the top 2 or 3 was certainly our cities. If we're going to have a prosperous, more equal, higher quality of life for more people, we're going to have to do it in cities. If we're going to save the planet from the climate emergency, we're going to do it in our cities. So, understanding and appreciating our urban environment is not an abstract concept, right? Fortunately, all of us, I guess, we're in our homes right now, but in a pre-COVID or post-COVID world, commutes look a little bit like this in our urban environments. This actually is a picture here from Florida, but not unlike most major cities in the world. We fell in love with the automobile, and whilst it serves us pretty good, we have real struggles with it. Traffic jams, congestion, the fumes that come out of these cars, the frustration, of sitting in traffic. I know, for example, here living in the Bay Area, when I used to commute to work 12 miles, it could take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the time of day. If it takes 1.5 hours to 2 hours to drive 12 miles, I think you'd agree that's the definition of failure, right? So this is largely failing us today. Now, also, as I've been very lucky to travel all over the world. Again, pre-COVID, I was traveling every couple of weeks to some city in the world to advise governments and to work with city leaders. And invariably, I'd arrive at the airport and I'd jump in a taxi or an Uber or something. And if I was in Sao Paulo or Paris or Chile, in Santiago, I would invariably hit traffic. So this is not an American phenomena. Let me tell you that straight away. The issues and challenges of our cities and to build better cities is a global phenomena. We do live in a hyper-connected, hyper-consumer society. And whilst that's given us abundance, it really has, in many parts of the world, and particularly here in the United States, there is an exhaust that is created from that hyper-consumerism, right? And that's, for example, the quality of our air. Now, it's quite striking, actually, that in the world, because of our processes, our human production processes, the World Health Organization says that about 8 million human beings die directly or indirectly because of air quality. And you have to remember, a lot of these mechanisms of production are to deliver to our city lifestyles. So, our cities have served us well, but we've got some real big challenges to overcome. It is not acceptable that in many communities around the world, the air quality is so poor. And this, by the way, this hyper consumerism that I'm talking about is creating masses of waste, right? Again, not an abstract concept. We see this with our very own eyes. Every time I get I purchase something or get a delivery, I'm so surprised by the amount of packaging. Is it all necessary? And you'll see soon that I've written some books for children because I want to educate them about the topic that when you drink a bottle of water and you throw that bottle of water into a trash can, it just doesn't magically disappear. Where does it go? Where does it go? And could we do it differently? Do we have to, drink a bottle of water, a plastic bottle of water, and throw it away every time we're thirsty? We know where some of it goes. Some of it goes into our lakes and our rivers and our streams and into our oceans. In fact, a lot of the world's plastic flows into the Pacific Ocean. And there's a area, sort of the northwestern part of the Pacific. It's this massive current we call a gyre. And it's about the size, by the way, about twice the size of Texas, full of plastic. And by the way, if you went there in a boat or flew over it in a plane and you look down at the water, you're not going to see plastic bags and bottles bobbing up in the water. You have to actually get up pretty close and, in fact, get a little net. And when you put the net through that water, it'll pick up these little beads of plastic, because the motion of the ocean breaks down these plastic bags and things into little plastic beads. And what happens is the fish, while they go around doing their thing in the Pacific, you know what they do? And while they're eating, they also eat the plastic. So the fish eat the plastic. And then we catch the fish and we bring the fish to our dinner table and we eat the fish. And so we're eating the plastic, right? So that's one heck of a circular system where we throw away the plastic and we end up eating it. It's said that we eat the equivalent of a credit card of plastic every single week. I think we can do better. I think you'd agree that we could do better with the waste we produce. Now, our cities have been incredibly successful. No human invention in the history of civilization has been as successful as cities for bringing the most amount of people out of extreme poverty, right? During the years 2008 to 2015, for example, in India, 200 million people were brought out of extreme poverty. That is, earning a little less than $1 per day into the working classes and beyond through urbanization. And we've seen that through the 3 and now the 4 industrial revolutions, that urbanization actually is serving more people and bringing more opportunity, more abundance to people's lives, but not for everybody. Not for everybody, right? It's failing a lot of people. And if you look in our American cities, our European cities, and all around the world, you'll see people who are not prospering in our urban environments. And I've said it often. I said, if everybody's not prospering, nobody's prospering. We have to create more equal, inclusive, prosperous societies for all. And this is one of the tasks ahead of us in our city environment. And the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, of course, is the changing average temperatures of the Earth over time. Right? Again, this is a topic you're probably well versed on. But when you think about, the average temperatures rising around the world, and this is causing sea level rise, more extreme weather, where is the brunt of it being felt? Well, most often in cities. About 800 cities around the world are on coastlines, representing about 1.4 billion people. And those coastlines are already rising and flooding those communities. We can see this with our very own eyes if you travel to Miami or Fort Lauderdale on the east coast of Florida. You can see this happening already. And nations in the Pacific are having to leave their countries, sadly, because the water rise is too aggressive. And so if we're going to tackle this problem, we're going to do it largely in cities. Here, I live here in Foster City, just near San Mateo. Most of you know it well, I imagine. And if you've been to Foster City in the last 12 months, you'll notice there's a lot of construction. What's happening? We're building a wall around the city. We're literally building a wall. When I walk out every night, go for my strolls, I walk up along the Bay Trail, which is beautiful. And we're building a massive, massive wall that will protect the city, we hope, from sea level rise over the next 40 years or so. And we'll soon see that around the airport of the San Francisco International Airport. Because, by the way, if we don't do that, all of the San Francisco airport will be underneath water, as will downtown San Francisco too. So this is, again, not an abstract thing, and it is happening as we speak. Why is it happening in our cities? Well, we're why do we feel it? Of course, because of the coastlines, but this is happening because our cities are producing an awful lot of carbon emissions through cars, through industrialization, through buildings. Buildings are incredible exhausts of carbon emissions that are heating up the environment. Now let's go down a level into our day-to-day lives here. I'll take you from the macro to the micro. And I want to tell you a quick story on this picture. I've been using this picture probably for about 5 or 6 years. And the first time I found this, this public domain picture, I had it in a presentation I was giving to a couple of thousand software developers in San Francisco. And so I put it up on the screen, and immediately I hear like all these like laughs, and I got this reaction from the audience, and I said, "Wait a minute, is this San Francisco?" and of course everyone said, yeah. I said, "Is this the DMV, the Driver Motor Vehicles Center, one of them in San Francisco?" And everyone's laughing. So they knew what I was driving at a little bit. They knew that if I was going to give an example of how many of us experience city functions, that the DMV would probably be the one I would share. Now, that's because it is something that almost all of us experience on a relatively regular basis. And well, look at this, right? It's actually an interesting sight during a time of a pandemic, because we're not doing as much of this. But this is, again, BC, before COVID, and what you're looking at here is, people go into a room in some city office, they take a number, they wait, they go up to a counter, they fill out some forms, maybe they have to go home and come back, maybe they got the wrong forms. This is not a great experience. This is not what people want in the third decade of the 21st century. This is not optimum efficiency. This is not how we think of the world. What we do want is a world like this. We want to get services on our smartphones, on our laptops, on our smartwatches. We want a digital, easy experience. We want to be able to do everything we do in an environment like this, but we want to do it from home when we want to, at our time. We don't have to go to a place and get our driver's license or whatever it is that you need from government. Unless you work for government, which I did for a very long time, not many of us wake up every day and say, "I can't wait to go to a city building and deal with city officials." And part of the reason is it's just not a great experience. There is a good news story, though. Many thousands of services and cities all over the world are moving from that kind of inefficient analog experience to a more digital, a more beautiful experience, where you can do the things you want to do with government from the comfort of your home or wherever you are. And by the way, this represents quite a significant opportunity. This is called the digitalization of government, taking those analog, repeatable services and making them digital, beautiful, lower cost, efficient, timely, and self-service, right? You should be able to do it yourself. Most services that we engage with in government don't require us to do it with people. We can simply work, via computer, because they're just repeatable, simple processes. And, this topic today that I've been telling you about, this is about doing the right thing, right? This is about doing good. This is about changing the world through our city experiences, but it's also about doing well. So we can do good and do well. And what I mean by doing well is the opportunity here is massive. I get the chance to speak to technologists and business leaders and city leaders all over the world. And I mean it, all over the world. I've spoken in Vietnam and Kazakhstan and Australia and the Middle East often. And so I get in front of everyone and I say, we need to do good, but we can do well, because this market, even by 2025, which now is only 3 years away, is valued about $2.4 trillion of opportunity to build these new services to prepare our cities for the future. And not only can we produce that amount of economic value by building and running organizations, but there's a massive contribution by building these smarter, more technologically driven communities. In fact, some research says it can produce about $20 trillion of economic development over over the next decade. Now, I've been talking to you a lot about issues, right? And so you get the idea of just taking a few. Obviously, this is a big topic with lots and lots of problems, but I've taken you through, air quality and transportation, and I've showed you things like waste management and more. And now let's shift gears a little bit to solutions. I've talked about issues and how do we solve them. Now, the good news is we have a lot, although we have an awful lot of very big problems, humans are incredibly smart in how we can tackle things, excuse me, and change the game. We might look at a problem today, something maybe as big and as in some ways as scary as the climate emergency, and think this is not solvable. But look through the decades and the centuries, we have solved some very big problems. That said, the climate emergency is a pretty big one, right? Which isn't going to be easily solved without international cooperation and aggressive action. But here's a few of the things. I want to give you some examples of what's happening in communities around the world. I like this one a lot. This is New York City, as you can tell. This is Times Square in Manhattan. And over on the left side, you can see what it looked like just a few years ago. Pretty busy place, and noisy, kind of smelly, polluted, dangerous. In fact, a lot of people occasionally, people get hit by bicycles, motorcycles, and cars and vans. And then look on the right side, where because of pedestrianization, because of giving back Times Square to people, it's a whole different experience. People are relaxed and comfortable. The sound is different. The air quality is different. People feel safer. In fact, the data shows that accidents have been reduced by about over 60% in Times Square as a result of taking cars out. So we've changed the experience by being bold, by thinking differently. We've actually not only created a safer, cleaner, healthier environment in Times Square. To some, obviously there's been some issues, as there is everywhere, but largely it's been a positive thing. We can do these bold things, even though there is resistance and pushback, and get completely different results. In fact, in Paris, the great city of Paris, the mayor and the mayor's team recently were successful after several years of campaigning to get a new project, a new plan for the city approved. And many of you probably know this street. This is the Champs-Élysées. You can see the Arc de Triomphe there just in the background. And, today, much like Times Square, the Champs-Élysées, the main thoroughfare through the great city of Paris, is busy, noisy. The air quality is bad. There's lots of pedestrian accidents and even automobile accidents. Whilst it's still an amazing place to visit, and I've been there often, as I imagine you have, many of you, it is not going in the right direction. It is trending towards a bad quality of life in an urban environment. So what the city proposed under the mayor's leadership was to create an urban garden, to basically make the center of Paris into an urban garden. Right? Pretty bold, pretty different thinking. And what does that mean? It means, well, first of all, planting a lot of trees. Trees are one of nature's greatest technologies, and trees in cities is a pretty amazing thing. So a lot more trees, narrowing the streets, making the streets more to be dominated by people, not by cars. There's even going to be little gardens where people can grow things like fruits and vegetables along Champs-Élysées. And as this develops, they will spread down different streets around that central area. And Paris, the center of Paris, will become a great big garden. That's going to take a few years, and it's a few $100 million, but it is underway. And it'll make something that is already attractive and interesting into something really beautiful, safer and cleaner in France. And that's only a good news story for Parisians. When we look back at Los Angeles, in a few decades ago, it was defined by smog, by chemicals in the air, and you could barely see downtown Los Angeles if you're close by on a sunny day. And today we've largely solved the smog problem. That's incredible that we shifted the entire environmental posture of a great city like Los Angeles and cleaned up the air. And how did we do it? We were bold. We took steps. We used technology. We used policy, and we made a big difference. Now there are a few very big macro trends that are happening in our communities. And I just want to touch on a few here, just because we have a very short amount of time together, and what they mean for each of us. Well, as we sort of sit here today, obviously all connected, right? All being powered by electricity on this Zoom Bay Area or Bay Breakfast meeting. We probably, it should not be lost on us that all of this is pulling in a lot of power, right? As our cities grow, as more people move into cities, as our planet becomes more urbanized, we have not lost our appetite for energy. In fact, we have more and more desires for energy. And we are in the early years of an energy revolution, right? And it's largely actually a good news story. Now, we need to do this because as we consume more energy, we want that energy to be, first of all, abundant. We want it to be clean. And we don't want to be killing the planet while we pull more, extract more energy from the ground, right? So we need to move away from carbon-based, the oil, gas, and coal, and move to non-carbon sources of energy. Now, the good news story is every day the sun rises in the sky and it produces enough power to power the entire planet if we can wire ourselves properly. Pretty much in absolute abundance and completely clean. And we've made amazing progress over the last few years in beginning to implement, in particular, solar power in our communities. Here you see the city of Freiburg. This is Freiburg in Germany. And, these people have solar panels on their roofs. And the cool thing here, and so my younger audiences love this, the kids that I show this to really love this, is, most of them know that their parents pay an electrical bill every month. And I tell them, hey, you know what, in this city, nobody pays an electrical bill. In fact, not only do they not pay an electric bill, but they get a check. The government pays them, the utility service pays them. And they're like, wow, this is incredible. Talk about a complete 180 shift in how we think about the future of our cities and of energy. Why do they get a check? Because mostly they're producing more power than they need and they're selling back to the grid. And we could see the same in cities, communities all over the world. Now, some of you are data focused. Some of you have great science background, so you want a bit of evidence here. Sure, we're going to have fossil fuels for the next few decades. There is no model that we see that has the elimination of fossil fuels. Unfortunately, we do need an all of the above approach. But what we do see as we introduce new gigawatts of energy production in the world, the amount of gigawatts of fossil fuel or carbon energy it drops, while the production of non-carbon goes way up. Look at that, by 2030, just a little over 7 years from now, almost, just about 8 years from now, we're introducing 279 new gigawatts of net new energy to the world. And if you look at the yellow there on the picture, it is largely being produced by solar, which is going to be, we believe, the big winner. Now, today, by the way, wind is the largest non-carbon producer of energy, but we see that shifting pretty soon into solar. Now, here's a picture of some work that I did when working in Palo Alto. And what you're looking at here is your typical light, your street light, your typical street light. And we go up to the top here of the street light, and you'll see a little bit of little technology here, just at the top here. What is it? So this is a set of sensors, and it's experimental. I did a lot of experimental work there with them, and it's doing things like detecting air quality. It's doing things like looking at whether parking spaces are full or empty. Now, what's really fascinating is when you look at a lot of congestion in a downtown area, a large proportion of it, some say anywhere from 30 to 60% of congestion in the downtown area is caused by people looking for a parking space, right? And so what happens is people are going to an office or a retail area, and they're just driving around blocks, looking for a space to become available. Now we've done a lot to put up signage and things, but we need more and more indicators, more information to help people find that. And so in this experiment, we had a sensor on the top of a light, street light, that would detect if a parking space was full or empty. We would collect that data, then send it to a repository where different apps could actually then give people information where the car is. I see that there's a question. Because I'm nearly done though, let's hold, if we could, I would love if you could hold that question to the end. Thank you, Bert. So that thing that I talk about there at the in the city is a sensor which falls into a category of what we call the Internet of Things. Basically, it is an internet device, a physical device that is connected to the internet and producing and collecting data and delivering it somewhere. And we are going to see an explosion of Internet of Things devices. We already see these in our homes, like with our with things like our smart assistants, with our thermostats. A lot of people have cameras at the front of their house that they can see who's there with their smartphone. These are all Internet of Things devices. They're physical devices connected to the internet. And we're hyper connecting the world through these devices. Right now, we think there's about 35. In fact, it's 2022. So we're about 40 billion of these devices are connected. And over the next 3 years, we'll connect another 30 billion. By 2025, there'll be 75 billion connected things in the world, of which 20% of those will be on our city environment doing some interesting things. So the most popular place, certainly in the short term, for connected devices will be our cities, right? And what will they be doing? Well, they'll be doing things like telling us about when the next bus or train is coming. It'll be telling us information about traffic accidents or monitoring the level of water in a community where there could be flooding, and weather monitoring and all sorts of things. These connected devices will be helping us solve in the years ahead. Okay, just a few more examples here till I take us to the end, and then I would love to get all your questions, which I imagine you have many. So what else is happening in the deployment of technology in our communities, making our cities and communities smarter? Some of these things are very visible, right? The digital signage is coming to many communities, helping us, for example, know whether a parking space is available, or perhaps information about entertainment or other information about the community, when the next council meeting is going to be held. We're upgrading our existing electrical system so it is more efficient. And you can see, for example, we can use technology to better manage our waste, but we have to do a lot more in these areas. These just give us a little tease at the possible options. Now, one thing I did want to share with you, I think there's one or two more things here, that I couldn't give you a presentation or a talk on the future of our cities without talking about the future of cars and transportation. This is another of those major macro topics. And I'm here to tell you today, as we speak together in January 2022, that in the future, cars are going to drive themselves and humans will not be allowed to drive. A lot of people are shocked when they hear that and they think I'm crazy. I do remind them that nobody rides a horse down the 101 or 275 these days. You can't, but you might ride a horse on the weekend. We probably drive a car on the weekend too, but you won't drive cars on the streets. Over the next 30 to 40 years, we are going to move aggressively towards a world of self-driving vehicles. Now, a few years ago, when I used to give this presentation, I would always hedge. I would always say, I think we're going to go to this. I think we're going to, based on the evidence. Now, having been in self-driving vehicles all over the world, I'm absolutely 100% convinced this is going to happen, and it's going to happen relatively quickly in the scheme of things. But it's not just about cars driving themselves. That's a very big deal and changes how we think about urban transportation. But it's also about things like how we design our cities, right? Think about this. The picture you're looking at right now is sort of the grid system, your typical urban environment in a recent, a new, modern American city. A lot of it was built for cars, right? not for people, but for actually facilitating driving cars. We don't have to have grid systems in a self-driving vehicle world. In fact, we don't have to have traffic lights, because self-driving cars don't care about traffic signals. We don't have to have lanes. All of these things are for humans, and we can think completely differently about those. Now, you might say, well, this is science that's a bit ways off. When is it coming? And I actually find that I'm having conversations with fairly well-educated people who think this is still years away. And I tell them, no, this is happening right now. This is not something that is going to happen. This is happening right now. In fact, in the city of Phoenix in Arizona, there's a service provided by a company called Waymo that is 100% autonomous. When you request a vehicle to take you to a destination on your smartphone, a car comes without a driver, picks you up, and delivers you anywhere in Phoenix entirely without a driver. This is today. Don't think about this as something in the future. You see a lot of self-driving vehicles already, for example, on business in business environments, such as a business park in this picture here. Our environment, our urban environments, are going to be changing fairly quickly over the next few years. We'll see things like the implementation of robots. Look at this guy. This is, in fact, a real security robot in a real city. Again, not experimental, but actually happening. That 24/7 is looking after this parking lot. Seeing if there's any people doing bad things. And you think about a robot like this. Well, it never goes asleep. It never has to be paid. It works 24 hours a day. So we will use more of this type of technology and automation in delivering better urban experiences, including in the sky and on the ground. We're going to see the emergence of drones in a very big way. Now we're going to have to, wrap some policy around this. We're going to have to think deeply about it, but drones are coming in a very, very big way. In many communities around the world, we already see experimentation done. Here in the US, some of the delivery companies have already got some early licenses. So we're going to start to see some package delivery. We're going to see drones used in all sorts of urban activities. It'll help the police. It'll help the fire service, for example, extinguish fires in hard to get to places and do a whole range of things. But most visibly, these drones will be delivering packages to our homes. Our skies will be full with them. So we have some policy and some community questions to get answered. And but this is happening, and it won't just be in the sky, but it will be on the ground. I'm surprised, by the way, still surprised, in fact, that the communities I go to, I often see these little robots now going around making deliveries. I was just at did a master class at the Ohio State University just a few months ago. And on that beautiful, huge campus, there are these robots delivering all sorts of things. And it was incredible to see it being used in a very productive way. So, as we look out and we think about our cities in the future, we have to, accept that we have great challenges in transportation, in energy, in waste management, and air quality, and equality itself, right? In the climate emergency, we have these major challenges, and we need solutions, and we need net new solutions. We need new people, new organizations, thinking completely differently about the city experience that we're going to have, and it's going to, as a result, change the world. These companies know that they can do good work, and they can do well by doing it. We have already seen that there are trillions of dollars of opportunity to be had. So as I bring this to a close here right now, I just want to leave with a question that's related to my first question is, assuming you believe that we have an urgency to build smarter and more sustainable communities, what can each of you do to create smarter and more sustainable communities, including your friends and families? So as I wrap up here, again, I wanted to thank you for your time and indulgence of my talk, for indulging me in my talk, I should say. I do want to let you know that I have written the bestseller on this topic. It's called Smart Cities for Dummies. I think it's a fun title, having smart and dummies in the title. But it's it's tongue in cheek. It's a sophisticated book that takes you through not only the issues, but the solutions. The book is sold all over the world and did become a bestseller. You can pick it up if this topic interests you. It's smartcitybook.com. There's the URL at the top. I also want to let you know that while I educate adults at universities and events and in all sorts of forums all over the world, I also want to, and I'm trying to get in front of children and young people to help inspire them and excite them about the possibilities of the future. So I have a series of children's books that you can see here. You can get them at smartcitybook.com/kids. The activity book has been a great success. We just released the bedtime rhymes. This might be great for any children in your life, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, your own children. So I would encourage you to check those out. Worst case, just go to Amazon and type in my name. You'll find them there. So with that, I wanted to say thank you very much. And I'd love to hear now the questions that you might have. I already see a few hands that are raised. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Reichental. Appreciate it. I think Bert was the first to raise his hand online. So Bert, if you'll lead off with the questions.
Sure, just a second. I've got a question for you. These are all possibilities of progress, and it's very good. I've electrified my house, and I'm actually generating more than I'm using. In your example there, and I'm converting my garage into a second or a first floor room, with a kitchen in the front, and my garage door is going to become a separate entrance. So I think I'm going there pretty well. The problem that I'm facing is actually, just to give an example, yesterday it was in the Chronicle, but it was actually happening from the beginning of the month. The Public Utilities Commission is considering granting an elimination of promotion of solar panels by taking away any kind of fair payment, which is going to really discourage conversion to solar. It's a really big deal within the solar community. Secondly, PG&E is pushing for, I think it's AB 1138 out of San Diego assembly person, which would charge a $70 a month delivery fee to anyone who has solar on their house. And what I'm leading to is the fact we have met the enemy and he is us. How do you deal with not the logic of making the conversion, because a lot of us are doing that. It's the logic of the powers that be that are actually trying to reverse it and trying to reverse it while they're saying they're doing the good for everyone. Any comment?
Well, thank you very much for your comments there. I appreciate the you referencing various laws that are underway or being passed. I have to say I'm not as knowledgeable on those, so I can't really speak to particular legislation. I do think this can be a personal choice, and for those that have migrated to solar, they speak highly of it, and a lot of my colleagues and friends and associates around the world speak about having little or no cost to their power anymore, or at least it's reduced their power use a lot, and at the same time feeling good about their impact on the planet. I think some of these topics unfortunately remain too much of a debate. The debate is progressing, I think, has been, certainly from my personal opinion, because I'm supportive of migrating to non-carbon, has been progressing in a positive way. If you look across the United States, we have a very varied set of approaches to moving to solar or to non-carbon. I mean, there's a lot of interest in continuing the carbon economy, and we have to be considerate to them, right? As jobs will go away in coal and oil and gas over time. We do have to convert and convert people and our economy to the non-carbon world. So I think my view, basically, at the end of the day, would be there may be short-term little blips, but the overall macro trend is towards non-carbon, and I think we'll see support for that in the long run.
All
Thank you.
right, Janice.
Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Fantastic. Well, I learned a lot, as I'm sure all of my cohorts in GGBC did. I have a two-pronged question about my hometown, Houston, Texas. My brother was flooded in 2 feet of water during Hurricane Harvey a few years ago. So I have a two-pronged question. Number one, how can we help reduce the flooding, the extreme flooding that is happening? In the case of Houston, they allowed overdevelopment. Now, when I go visit, I see a lot of new drainage projects, but what can we do to stem the tide of overdevelopment and help these cities reduce and stop the flooding? Number two, I was horrified during Hurricane Harvey as I was watching Facebook like a hawk during that time, where people were sending out calls for help for their elderly relatives. So the communication was clearly broken, emergency communication systems to help elderly get out of their flooded houses. What advice do you have for those cities?
Great, two great important questions. I'll try to briefly touch on them. Sometimes you can tell people about things and explain them, but they have to experience them themselves to really understand them completely. This is part of the human condition, right? We've known for a long time that Houston was vulnerable. People have been saying, talking about the overdevelopment and the lack of protections for a long time, and then the city was hit and hit badly. Some of it we have to accept that nature has its own agenda, and that's going to continue to happen. If a volcano erupts in the Pacific, there's not much you can do about it, but it doesn't happen that often, right? So what you see now in Houston is a lot of effort to think differently and to mitigate. So there is sort of we think about sort of the climate issue of cities on the coastline in a number of ways. One of them is over time we're probably going to have to withdraw from our coastline, so go more inland. That'll happen over a much longer period of time. Another one will be that we have to build higher up, so we elevate properties. And the third is mitigation. So things like, for example, in Foster City, where I live, we're building a wall around the city, and we're doing it a few decades in advance of where the problem might lie. So Houston needs to be working on these, and imagine they are plus more. But there are great examples, Florida being one, where a lot of development happened, particularly in the southeast of the state, that is not commensurate with the risk that they now have of hurricanes. We've been lucky for a few years, but a big hurricane will hit Miami and the east coast of Florida, and the damage and the problem will be massive in the maybe this year or maybe in the years ahead. In the second question, it was interesting. A few is it about a decade or so ago, Haiti had a catastrophic earthquake and really destroyed a large part of the country. And the most important thing is that people could communicate. But a lot of the landlines were completely down. A lot of communication was not available. But some of the cell stuff still worked. Cell, it was actually remarkably resilient, as was, of course, any satellite communications. So that, we learned a lot from that. And here in the US, when we have a disaster now, the big telcos quickly mobilize, mobile cell towers and try to get the cell infrastructure up running very, very quickly. I think what we're seeing with continued investment in our wireless technology around the United States, more resilience built in. We recognize that, and this came, by the way, really, really loud and clear to us after 9/11 in New York City. A big city like New York, people couldn't communicate, and emergency services couldn't communicate. And now we have our specific mechanisms and channels just for public safety in the event of a major disaster. So more investment is happening, and there is that recognition that we need a more robust, resilient wireless network, which is happening. Wow, a lot of questions. Let's see.
Hugh, tough. Wow, a lot of questions. Yeah, we've got running out of time, so we got about 12 minutes or so. So
Sure.
Hugh,
I'll try to
Real
be
quick.
brief then.
I drove last year from San Carlos to San Mateo, and I got, out of 23 lights, traffic lights, I got 18 red. Is anybody making an effort to synchronize traffic lights? It would save an awful lot of gas, and it would also speed up traffic through cities.
Yes. Well, there's lots of work being done to synchronize lights within cities, but you make a much bigger and important point, which often comes up, is traffic flow is not restricted by cities. Traffic doesn't care if you're driving between Menlo Park and Palo Alto or wherever it is. It's all contiguous. So we do have to sync things up. We're early in the Bay Area, by the way, around some of this technology, but some of our communities are trying to sync up and make, by the way, the traffic signals more dynamic. I always give the example of the parent who maybe has to go at 2 a.m. at night, has to go and pick up some medicine for a kid, or get some milk or something, and you're out, there's nobody on the streets, and yet all the lights are red, right? Makes no sense to me. The lights should be green if there's no traffic. And in many communities, that we call that dynamic traffic signaling systems, we're starting to see the incorporation of that. I think the best answer, though, for your question is, let's get rid of traffic lights altogether. We don't need them in a autonomous vehicle world. Traffic lights were built for humans driving cars, and I think in the long term, we don't need them, or we won't have them.
okay,
Thank you.
we got Betty.
Thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
2 questions. One of them is the seawall. I think Foster City is way ahead of, but I'm on the San Francisco Maritime National Park Association, and we've had a lot of talk about a wall and with the airport and so forth.
Yeah.
This is an unanswerable question, but where do the funds come from? It is so expensive. That's one comment. The second question is, with all of this transition to technology and that apparatus on the top of the light pole, how are we going to transition the workers, the people that work on the roads or work in oil rigs or whatever, to learning more technology and how to do that over a period of time? That to me seems so overwhelming, and never mind changing their mindset that we need to learn more technology.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Thank you, Betty. Such terrific questions. So let me try to be quick. The most important question always is, how do we pay for it? No doubt about it. I think there's always this question of which is more expensive, doing nothing or doing something, what is fascinating about the debate about climate change is, yes, mitigation costs a lot of money, but the cost in the long term of not doing it is vastly greater in insurance, in health, in damage, to infrastructure, jobs, economics. So, we're probably going to have to borrow, and we're going to have to print money, the things we do. It's going to hurt. But if we are big thinkers and thoughtful, it actually should be better in the long run. We're probably going to have to raise some taxes, Now, fortunately, California is doing pretty good right now. Maybe we'll spend some of that extra cash on some of these climate mitigation efforts. On the second item, you asked about the jobs. Big question there, like what happens to people as we have an increasingly automated world? The numbers on this are very sobering, actually. There's two debates. One is that automation and artificial intelligence, like a lot of automation over the industrial revolutions, will create more opportunity and higher pay, more meaningful jobs. That's one argument. The other one is the fourth industrial revolution is completely different, and the scale and dynamics of the technology means that a lot of people will be displaced. In fact, one of the numbers is, within a few decades, about 800 million people will lose their jobs in the world. That's about 20% of the world's workforce. And that's a very different question. What do you do with people who not only have lost their jobs, but will never be able to work again? And we have to think about that. We have to think about things like, does universal basic income make any sense? Where people get paid to survive, if you like. So I'm not here to give an answer to that other than to say it's recognized, and they're, smart people think about these things. I am a little bit more optimistic than a lot of people. I do think that having a life of continuous learning and retraining is going to be more of the norm than a person who perhaps went through high school, went to university, or got a trade, and then just delivered the same skills their entire life. I think we'll see people having multiple different careers during their lives as a consequence of great change.
All right, Pete, you were next. Then Antonio.
I am muted. I'm sorry. Thank you. Actually, I'm interested always in smart cities, the development of cities. That has to do with my connection to transportation. And my entire career when I was in the real world, before I started doing this kind of stuff, is I was in the waste management industry. So I see the amount of waste we have in this country, and it is just incredible. And you can even see it if you walk out into your neighborhood. The UPS truck is still there, and the FedEx truck is still there, but so is the Amazon truck, and there are more Amazon trucks than FedEx and UPS. When we look at traffic, I like to measure traffic by vehicle miles traveled. I don't like, loss of service and all these. I like vehicles amount of trucks. That tells you the story. You have all those Ubers and Lyfts out there, whether they're automated or not. They're on the road and they're moving. They're moving around to pick people up, and they're moving more than half the time empty. Mm-hmm. So that's just burning, whether it's electricity, gasoline, whatever, burning energy. And it's because of the American penchant for everything now. I need my Uber now. I can't wait 4 minutes. It has to be here now. And that certainly figures into the equation, it really does. And even with all of this massive waste, it's because you need stuff now, and if the guy at the Amazon warehouse only has a big box, he's going to stick it in that big box because he's got to get it to you now. You talking about the signals. Why can't signals be coordinated? Well, smart cities can do that. And actually in San Mateo County, all of our signals on El Camino Real, from Daly City all the way to Palo Alto, are smart signals. But who do they benefit? Well, they benefit public safety. Fire truck can make the signal turn green. That's a good thing. But they also benefit public transit. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to hold a signal or to turn that signal green so we can move faster. So my answer to you is, well, if you don't want to spend so much time at red lights, get on the bus. Bus can turn the lights green. That's just an example of smart cities and technology that we can employ to improve our lives. But we still have so much that we have to do. I am very concerned about the whole issue of employment. People tell me, well, your drivers will still be employed because they'll be attendants. They'll help the handicapped people get on and off. So my answer says, well, great. Are you going to pay them the same amount of money? Well, of course not. Well, remember, BART is a fully automated system. The BART attendant who does not operate the train makes more than any transit operator in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. And it's a fully automated system. So, if you want to do that, great. There's that avoids one social cost, but it trades it for another. Right. So it is a very complex subject, which we can talk about all times. It's smart cities is great. One of the biggest requests that I get is that I want to know when my bus is going to be here. It's back to that. I need to know now. Yeah. And so we're getting them all connected. So you'll know where your bus is, just like your Uber. But a lot of that is the societal, I need it now. And we have to accommodate that. We all do if we want it to be here. But it's very interesting. You could talk another hour, I'm sure, and I could talk an hour, and I don't know what happened to Bird Hill, but I'm sure he could talk an hour. But it is
we're going to take off now before you start and go to Antonio for the last question.
Thank you.
There's no doubt that Pete could talk for hours, and it doesn't have to be about an interesting subject for that matter. So Pete, my question is really, really focused on insurance, and you actually touched it just very lightly upon it. I've heard topics that we're not going to take these climate changes seriously until insurance providers stop backing developments on areas where there is an obvious trend towards being underwater at some time in the future, namely Florida. And there are so many gigantic apartment building monstrosities in Florida that it seems completely irresponsible, based upon the trends that you're talking about, that an insurance organization would underwrite any of these projects here. Can you talk about any work that you're doing with the insurance industry, particularly in Florida, would be interesting, because we're talking about multi-hundred, 1,000 plus, multi-hundred units apartment centers here that will potentially be completely devastated in the very near future, that have cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce. So at what point are insurance organizations going to say, we're accountable now for the rights of our shareholders and our investors and so on, and we know these things are going to be underwater and at a loss and we're screwed, so we're going to stop insuring these programs here? What are your topic, discussions about that?
Well,
and thanks for a great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot in your question, in that you just by listening to your question shares a lot of insights around this important topic. One of the ways that Floridians are feeling it is their premiums are going way up. I mean, we definitely see that, and it's going to jump more and more as the population grows and the frequency of natural disasters happen, as well as the flooding. Invariably, the insurance is going to go up. It's an awfully complicated question to answer in just 1 minute. We do still see some short-term thinking. We do still see sort of economics trumping a lot of, some more longer-term thinking on this topic. And so we do have a ways to go to, migrate how we consider our locations about where we live. Humans are interesting like this, right? They can be living in the sort of base of a volcano, and then the volcano erupts and lots of people die and people move, have to move. But when the volcano is dormant, they move back. Like there's an interesting connection between humans and the land. So I will, it may be a topic we can chat about later if it fascinates you or you're interested. I just can't answer it thoroughly in the 30 seconds I have here, other than to say insurance premiums are going way up for Floridians.
All right, let me just kind of tie that in a bow then. In Northern California, where we had the fires on such a great part of that area, there are certain parts where areas that are constantly under fire hazards aren't getting the insurance in some cases to underwrite fire insurance. So in some cases, it's just going to stop insuring some of these things because the cost is so high. And so isn't talking to the insurance organizations in some kind of way something that helps them to, somebody's got to be accountable for this. And if insurers are constantly insuring these things, the accountability goes, there is no accountability to a certain degree. So anyway, thank you for a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reichental. Appreciate the presentation. Everybody, thank you for a wonderful day. We're going to end the recording and the meeting.